Let's bring in MS Now reporter Nnamdi Ogunwu, who is on the ground in Birmingham, Michigan. John Della Volpe, MS Now political contributor and director of polling at the Harvard Kennedy School's Institute of Politics. Also with us is our friend Craig Mauger, state politics reporter with the Detroit News, and Adrian Elrod, former senior advisor to the Harris campaign. Appreciate you all joining us on this big day. Suddenly, Michigan has become the place where everybody around the country is looking at, and I think for good reason. But Nnamdi, you've been on the ground for a long time now in Michigan here in the days leading up to the primary. What are you hearing from voters? And pulling aside for a moment, what are the issues that you keep hearing from folks bring up?
You know what, Vaughn, it's been interesting. I feel like today we're finally hearing what issues have landed with voters after all of the advertisement, all of the campaign remarks, what people are actually remembering as they cast their ballot. I'm in Oakland County right now, Birmingham specifically. This is an area that you would expect Haley Stevens to do relatively well. One, it's because it's her district, but two, because this is a bit more of a moderate area in the state that's traditionally favored Democrats. 10 years ago, it was more Republican. That being said, when I talk to people about the reason they are backing Haley Stevens, what I'm hearing is electability, a belief that she would do better against Mike Rogers in a general election, which we know polling has suggested as well. When I talk to people who aren't supporting her, the one issue that seemed to be the most salient, the most elicit the most passion from people certainly was her stance on Israel and her support for taxpayer dollars continuing to be used to support the Israeli military. I want to play you portions of my conversations with voters here today, and I'll start with that point specifically. This is what a voter had to say when she learned that Haley Stevens, rather relative to Abdul El-Sayed, supports U.S. support for Israel. Take a listen.
I just wouldn't want a single of our family's tax-paying dollars to go towards something like that. It's like giving money to violence.
So would you support a Senate candidate, in this case Haley Stevens, who's more of a moderate like you tend to like, but would that be enough?
That would definitely turn me off as 100%. I couldn't. I would vote for a communist first.
I thought that Stevens has a better chance of winning in the general election. I like her. I voted for her when she ran for Congress. I think El-Sayed has some very good policies that I do support. I think it might be sad to say, I think that the fact that he uses the term democratic socialism may be a negative factor. Not that I'm opposed to that. I just think that scares people away, some people.
So what's interesting, I also spoke to a Republican voter, and I asked her, who would you prefer Mike Rogers face off against, Haley Stevens or Abdul El-Sayed? She said quickly Abdul El-Sayed, and it's because of what you kind of heard from that last voter. Despite his best efforts to shake the perception that he's a democratic socialist, he has said again and again he supports capitalism, he's just a progressive, voters here seem to still have that perception, and it's certainly influencing the way they're voting today.
Craig, an MS Now analysis of federal campaign finance records shows more than $57 million in outside spending aimed at shaping the outcome of this Michigan race, including $34 million supporting Stevens and $20 million opposing El-Sayed, and then $3.5 million supporting El-Sayed. I have followed your work for years now, Craig, and have used it as a gut check. And for folks that are not living in Michigan, what should they understand about what the outcome of this race says, and if El-Sayed does overcome that kind of spending gap?
I mean, it will be a historic win if El-Sayed does take this race today. One, because of the level of spending. We have not really seen in recent times a competitive race like this that has had such a difference in terms of the amount of money flowing to the two different candidates. That figure, $60 million in outside spending benefiting Haley Stevens is so significant and so large, and voters have picked up on it. The money in this race is one of the things you hear when you talk to people out on the street about it over and over again. I was just in downtown Lansing talking to some voters, and a 72-year-old woman named Janet Taylor told me the reason she wanted to go out and vote was to get the clowns out of Washington. I think that tells you that there's a little bit of that vibe of a change election, and if that is what is driving people to the polls, that probably benefits Abdul El-Sayed.
John, to Craig's point, there's kind of this weird dynamic here when it comes to outside money. How galvanizing when it comes to polling of an issue is outside money for a campaign? Is pro-Israel group AIPAC's $30 million helping Stevens' candidacy? Or is it a vulnerability because we have seen Al-Sayed repeatedly use it as a message that he cannot be bought and beholden by outside influence?
It feels, Vaughn, like there's a backlash to it. And I would argue that it's hurting more than helping, and really kind of the fuel behind Al-Sayed's campaign wrapped around, obviously, his economic populism. What we're seeing, I think, within the Democratic Party is a generational realignment. And when you look inside the polling numbers, this is not just a kind of a youth-focused campaign by Al-Sayed. He's leading by 42 points, according to the Emerson College poll, among voters in the 20s, 30s, 40s, all the way up to age 50. He's actually leading by double digits among Democratic primary voters in their 50s as well. So what we're seeing is, I think, kind of the backlash to corporate money. His message is quite clear kind of in that regard. And I think that is really what's fueling his economic populism in the campaign right now.
And Adrian, Democrats will need to unite behind whoever wins today's primary. Mike Rogers lost by just about 20,000 votes when he ran in 2024. Yesterday, Haley Stevens told MS Now that despite how contentious this race has become, she expected whoever lost to endorse the winner. Depending on who wins, how do the different Democratic Party factions come together for the general? And in 2016, Bernie Sanders outperformed Hillary Clinton in the 2016 Democratic presidential primary. As someone who was working for Hillary Clinton at the time, did you see the results, what was it now, 12 years ago, as an early sign of this growing tension in the Democratic Party? And can these two factions in the year of 2026 effectively fuse themselves together to win a competitive purple seat if Al-Sayed were to win tonight?
Yeah, Vaughn, I like the way you teed that up, because here's the bottom line. I was on Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2016. We certainly started off that campaign thinking that Martin O'Malley, the former governor of Maryland, was going to be our strongest opponent. Obviously, that was not the case. Bernie Sanders, certainly had a movement behind him, and that movement is now transitioning into some of these DSA candidates. I think to an extent, Vaughn, we've sort of been putting a Band-Aid on not this problem, but this scenario where you've seen this emergent part of the electorate that is frustrated with affordability, frustrated with establishment candidates, feels that they've been putting faith in whether it's an incumbent or somebody who tacks more to the middle, and they have not been getting and seeing the results that they want. Now, that being said, I still think that Haley Stevens in Michigan has a very strong chance of winning tonight, especially if the coalition she's put together turns out. Black women are staunchly behind her. Vaughn, you cover campaigns for a long time. You know that Black women are the strongest voting bloc of the Democratic Party, and they are largely behind her. So if we see high Black turnout in Detroit and some of these more urban areas of Michigan, I think Haley's got a strong shot. But look, the bottom line is this. I think Democrats are going to have to grapple, the establishment Democratic Party, rather, will have to grapple with how to handle some of these DSA candidates. Some are more I think tacking, more to the middle, as Al-Sayed said, he is a capitalist, than some of the others. But ultimately, there is a strong aspect of the DSA platform that the Democratic Party just does not support, like abolishing the Senate, abolishing the military, whatever things that they've said in their platform. So this is, I think, regardless of the outcome tonight, going to be a huge proxy issue that Democrats are going to have to focus on in 2028.
I appreciate the conversation. I know, especially tomorrow, we'll have that potential follow-up that if Al-Sayed were to win tonight, this would be really the first time we've seen a progressive of the Bernie Sanders ilk run in a competitive Senate seat or even House seat. And the question here is, in the year of 2026, I think, as to what extent can they put up a fight against somebody who has tried to position himself as more of a moderate Republican here in the Trump area. Nnamdi Egwuonwu, John Della Volpe, Craig Mauger, and Adrian Elrod, we appreciate you all.